Okay.
Just give you an idea if we're running kind of closer to the end. If you feel like, oh man, I've got like 20 seconds and you want to completely run to the end of that 20 seconds, feel free to if you're really making
So
a point.
what are you going to give me, like a 30-second warning or a 1-minute
So you'll
warning?
be able to see it if for some reason you're talking about something and we're
Mm-hmm.
getting low. You'll see as we're running. Oops, like, oh, there are 10 seconds left.
And
I
you'll
count
you'll
down.
just point
I'll
over
just
there.
point, yeah,
Okay.
so you can see it. And feel free to finish making your point. I don't have to get a last word in, but I
Okay.
can if you're like, I'm done. We've got 5 seconds.
All right.
That's fine. So
And we have
that's good.
like four
We have
12-minute
four
segments.
12-minute segments running. Okay. Hello, everyone who is joining us live now. We're going live on Facebook as well. It's great to be with you guys. I have in studio with me Robia Scott.
Hi.
Is so excited for our conversation, Robia, because not only are you the recent star, one of the stars of Unplanned, but you also have a dance background. You toured with Prince.
Yes, that's correct.
And for me, coming from the dance world, I think there's so much that we can cover from the Me Too movement that we're seeing in Hollywood and your return back into acting for the first time in 15 years.
I'm excited. Let's go.
So, okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, everyone who's joining us live, not on YouTube, will have about, one of my headphones is out, Jim. We'll run with it. It's fine. We'll have just about a minute of crickets because you will not hear the intro running through the radio feed. We're good to go.
You're listening to Trending with Timmerie, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics. National speaker Timmerie Millington has been a passionate advocate for life as long as she can remember, helping Gen X through Z answer the call to true feminism and authentic manhood. Timmerie holds a master's degree in biblical theology, and she covers this week's hottest stories from a Catholic worldview. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie.
Hello, dear friends. It's good to be with you. In studio today, I have a special treat. Some of you may be aware of the former Planned Parenthood director, Abby Johnson's story. She was one of the youngest directors of Planned Parenthood in Texas, and she had a major conversion back in about 2009. And since then, she has become a major advocate for life. And her story is a story unplanned. It was written as a book about 8 or so years ago and has now come out as a movie airing on March 29th. Now, I have with me in studio, as I mentioned, Robia Scott, who's making her debut back to Hollywood, in a sense, in this film after 15 years past of having traveled the world with Prince as his Pearl on the tour.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit of why have you decided to come back into the acting world after having left and had a major conversion?
Well, let me tell you how it all sort of came about. I started dancing when I was a teenager, and I did tour with Prince for his Diamonds and Pearls album. After that, I transitioned into acting, and I was on various shows like Beverly Hills 90210 and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
And it was around that time that I became a Christian. So I was still auditioning a bit for roles, but so many of the opportunities on TV and in film were just such a conflict of interest as I was growing in God that I just didn't want to do it. And I also quickly had an affinity for the things of God, for prayer and for speaking. And I just knew that God was transitioning me out of entertainment. I had had a 20-year entertainment career and really had given me the oomph to launch into full-time ministry.
Wow.
Which is what I've been doing for the last 15 or more years. I am a speaker, a teacher, an author of a book, Counterfeit Comforts, and I travel and I minister at churches. So I honestly had no intention of ever going back to Hollywood. But then I had people start to say to me, I don't think God's done with you in Hollywood. I said, well, literally, he would have to drop it in my lap because I don't see myself going to pursue anything. And drop it in my lap, he did.
So is this how you came to the movie Unplanned?
Yes, it's how I came to the movie Unplanned. I met a woman who I did not know. I randomly met her. She happened to know Chuck and Carrie, the writer-directors of Unplanned. She said, I really feel like you're supposed to meet them. She set it up. We had a coffee. They shared with me the story about Unplanned. I was instantly intrigued. They gave me a little bit of the script to look at with my role. I was also intrigued and then also wary because my role is quite intense. But I did go read for the movie, and I knew pretty quickly at that time that I sensed that God was calling me to do this movie. So after a 15-year hiatus from acting, God brought me back to do this kingdom film.
And you're so incredibly talented because after 15 years, you slide right into this role. I mean, you're truly playing, in many ways, the villain of the story in a way. I mean, you're there grooming Abby Johnson, coming from college. You know, she's a recent recruit. She starts as, you know, many in the pro-life community refer to them as death escorts. They're the women who escort women who show up for their abortions into the clinic. And so many who are on the pro-life sidewalks praying for these women not to have their abortions, they are trying to reach out and talk to women who are about to walk in. And these women facilitate by just continuing to talk to the abortion-minded woman, wrap their arm around her and pull her inside. And so this is where Abby began in Planned Parenthood. And your role as Cheryl is the one who really grooms her to take over in directing this clinic.
Yes, I play the face of Planned Parenthood. I play the director of the clinic who brings Abby under my wing and grooms and mentors her.
Yeah, the movie's phenomenal. If you are not familiar yet, please head over to unplannedfilm.com. It's released March 29th. We're going to be getting into much of the story, your role in the movie, how that role impacted you and what you learned about Planned Parenthood and the abortion movement. And I'm really interested to get your take, an inside take on the Me Too movement. That, I mean, I know that it's really become popular starting 2017, 2018, but the reality is that that's the life of Hollywood and has been for years. And you can't come out unscathed in some sort of interaction with the challenges of that world.
That's true. Yes.
So, Romeo, tell me a little bit more about what made you choose to take on the role of Cheryl in Unplanned.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know if I fully chose it. It came to me, and I did. I guess I did choose. I felt that God had brought me back for this film. It is for such a time as this movie. When I had met with Carrie and Chuck, they told me that they had the rights to Abby's book, Unplanned, and they had the rights for 6 years. And these are godly men, and they pray on everything that they do.
Incredible human beings, the directors and producers, writers working on this film. I mean, you know that they have truly been led by God in their work, and pray for them. Because
yes, please pray for them. Pray for all of us, because this is such a God work. And of course, there's resistance. There's spiritual resistance. But they had prayed about moving forward to go into production with the movie 6 years ago when they got the rights. And the Lord spoke to them and said, not yet. So they put it on the back burner. And a year later, they looked at it again, and the Lord said, not yet. And then finally, all these years later, just last year, the Lord released them to make the movie. But how incredible is that? Had this film come out 4 years ago, 3 years ago, it would have been impactful. But now, on March 29th, in theaters nationwide, over 1,000 theaters all over the country, and soon to go international. You know, even when we were filming the movie, our culture wasn't looking like it is now. We had no idea that in the time that we were filming till now, this would be passed in New York, the late-term abortion, and people would be applauding and celebrating that you can have an abortion all the way up to birth for any reason at all. We had no idea that the Senate would vote on this after-birth bill.
19 times the Senate has rejected to protect babies born alive. They're on record.
It's unfathomable that they are protecting kittens and, you know, bird eggs and all these animals that, you know, we love animals, God bless animals, but to even say that that's in the same, put that in the same place as a child.
I want to come back for a second, just from the perspective of discernment. The directors and writers, producers, it really is kind of having the rights for all these years of Unplanned and praying, okay, no, now isn't the time to write this story. Isn't that a reminder for all of us in our lives that there are times where I'm feeling called to this project, whether it's, you know, to leave one part of the world you've lived in, whether, you know, with your dancing, and to be called out of acting for a number of years and then to be back, but to always be so aware of, yes, there may be this desire, there may be this great project, but it might not be the time.
Waiting on God is invaluable.
Yeah.
Obedience commands the blessing.
Absolutely.
Says the Bible. So to learn how to trust him, to surrender, to know that he has your best plan, and to yield to that. I mean, we can't write it any better than God has. So this is just an example of that.
So how has acting in the movie Unplanned transformed your view of abortion? Because I can't imagine it's not further developed where you stand on the topic.
Of course, I had somewhat of an understanding of Planned Parenthood when I stepped into the role, because as a minister, I was also excited about lifting the veil for people to really understand. Part of ministry is the truth and a passion for the truth, because, we know the truth and the truth makes us free. So as a minister, that's what I'm continually doing, is bringing the truth forward. But here was a whole nother aspect where I know that so many people don't have the full understanding of the truth. So when I move forward with this film, I think I was like so many people in our culture, even the Christian culture, because we have been programmed what to believe by television programming, because so much of the media is coming from that viewpoint, the left side. And Planned Parenthood has done a wonderful job of programming us all to believe that they're about women's empowerment, they're about health. Abortion is a very small percentage of what they do, only if they have to, but only to keep it safe, but it's really another thing. But of course, as you study it a little bit more deeply, that is not the case. I didn't know that when, if you were pregnant, that you couldn't actually go to Planned Parenthood to plan your parenthood. There's no prenatal care offered there. I didn't know that they really don't give you options to see, would you like to maybe give your baby up for adoption? Would you like to have your baby and we'll help you become a parent? No, when you go to Planned Parenthood, there really is one option, and that is abortion. So this is what I believe, that so much of our pro-choice culture, especially our youth, they don't understand that. They don't know that. So when they see this movie, and they see it up on the screen and see this story, it's going to really be an eye-opener.
We were both at the red carpet recently for the screening of Unplanned, and I have to say it was hard because there was a major, what I'd say, a reunion of the pro-life community and much of the pro-life Christian community, acting community there as well. And, we're so excited to see all of our dear pro-life friends from all over the country. One friend I hadn't seen in about 12 years for this. But then as you're watching the movie, you just felt like your heart was broken, and you need tears throughout the movie, crying. And I being someone who's been very involved, none of this is a surprise. Abby's story, I was there following her story as she left. But the power of showing how an ultrasound guided abortion and her having to participate and holding the equipment so that this guest abortionist who was there at the clinic one day could watch as the baby's body parts are truly being torn apart. That is what led her into her conversion. She went from believing, here I am defending women's rights, standing up for women, and she thought she was trying to reduce abortions. But in reality, she was responsible for over 22,000 abortions.
Well, she believed all the propaganda that she had been fed, that she was really just dealing with cells and it wasn't even a life, until that moment where she saw the ultrasound and she saw a perfectly formed baby. And she was shocked when she saw the baby actually retract from this suction. She thought, what is this? And she even says in the movie, the baby's pulling away. And the abortion doctor says, they always do that. That's why we use the ultrasound, so we can see and make sure that we can view the baby and get it accurately. So she was completely, it was like the veil was lifted from her eyes and the spirit of revelation was upon her. And she could not believe at that moment what she had been participating in for 8 years. And as you stated, over 22,000 abortions. That's
Robia Scott, one of the actresses of Unplanned. We will be right back to talk a little bit about the Me Too movement. Okay, wonderful.
That's one. One down. I'm so tired. My voice even sounds a little off from last night. We were out late last night.
You poor thing. And it was so loud
That's the other thing. It was so loud. So all day doing press and then doing the red carpet and then at the party kind of screaming to talk to people. So I got home, I had a little sore throat and I was like, oh no.
Oh, no.
I can't
hydrate.
Can't like
tea.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and head right into our next segment. And I would like to go into, okay. Let's go ahead and go. It'll pick up in the video though. Can we close it? Are you sure? Because that cameras, both of those are pulling sound directly from them. Okay, if you think they're good.
It stays cooler in here if we have
All right, honey. Love you.
Okay. Yep.
You're listening to Trending with Timmery, where morality and culture meet, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics.
Welcome back. In studio with me is Robia Scott. She is the actress manager who grooms Abby Johnson, a true pro-life hero who has come from, truly a St. Paul, St. Augustine story, from having participated, been complicit in over 22,000 abortions to now being a major pro-life advocate. And Robia, I want to talk about one of the specific scenes in the movie where you bring Abby Johnson into the product of conception room. And I know this is probably going to be one of the hardest scenes that I imagine you actually filmed.
It was difficult.
Tell me a little bit, tell our listeners who haven't seen the movie yet, of course, it's coming out March 29th, what that was and how that really processed for you as well.
The POC room is products of conception. And what happens there is that after each abortion, they have to gather all the different body parts of the baby in a petri dish to make sure that all the parts are there, because if they're missing a part, then they left it in the woman, and that could be dangerous for her. So in this room, they actually call it in the movie, and I believe it came from the book because everything in the movie is from the book. Right. The abortion workers call it the Holy of Holies.
And at one point, one of the abortion clinic workers makes a joke about it, referring to, I believe, as the pieces of children room. Like, you're going to the pieces of children room.
Yeah, exactly. So I bring her in because it's a bit of a test to see if Abby, if she can handle it emotionally. So I invite her in. I give her the opportunity to really investigate the baby in the dish. And she is enthralled by just how the baby is formed. And the scene goes on for me to say, most people come in here and cry when they see this, but you don't. And that's how I know that you're in position to really take over this clinic and to rise in this corporation. And it's an intense scene, as all my scenes are. All my scenes were very difficult. People see the villain, and some actresses will say, oh, isn't it incredible to play the bad guy? And it's so fun. And maybe for some actors it is, but honestly for me, I can't say that the role was fun. I didn't enjoy saying these lines and portraying this person. But I enjoy being a part of this film because we all knew on set, everyone knew that we were doing something bigger than us. And because of that, we felt the resistance, we felt the spiritual warfare, but we also had a paid intercessory prayer department. I don't know if you know that, which talk about the power of prayer. When you're doing a television show or a film, there are paid departments, hair and makeup. They do your hair and makeup, you have wardrobe, they get you ready. On this film, we had a paid prayer department with 5 powerhouse men and women that were continually praying over the directors, the actors, everything that was going on, and we needed it. So it was intense. It was an intense role. It was intense for all of us. But I am just excited to see how God's going to use this film.
It's actually rated R for those who don't know. And the coincidence is that abortion is rated R. And that scene alone, is so difficult. And Abby's story, she would reassemble the baby body parts at times to make sure that all of them were there. So, you're literally there, and it's hard to hear, but you're looking at the piece of the baby's leg. You're looking at part of the baby's skull, and you're reassembling to perfectly reform the skeleton of the child. And Robia, one of the stories I heard recently from an OBGYN's husband, he came up to me after one of my presentations, and he said, my wife has been an OBGYN for years. She's recently retired. And I shared this last week on the show for those who are listening. And he said she would be heartbroken day in and day out because in her work, she would often come across the fetal remains, the remains of the babies that are still in the women causing infection. And he said this was a major cause of medical issues. But I'm sitting here saying, this is something I have never heard. That I know that it can happen. I know that it's a cause for infection, infertility, and many medical issues, but it was a daily occurrence for this woman who's an OBGYN.
See, these are the aspects that we don't think about because Planned Parenthood has conditioned us now to believe that it's not a baby and it's just a real simple little procedure and you can just get rid of this inconvenience and there are really no repercussions. But little do they know that does our culture know that there are a ton of repercussions, and we show that on film. I think another one of the most powerful scenes in the movie is when Abby has her second abortion and she chooses to take the abortion pill. because she is told that it will be very gentle, will gently take the baby out of your womb. But as you'll see in the movie, it's one of the most impactful scenes in the film where she goes through, agonizing pain for weeks on end. And a bill that
it was 8 weeks after having taken the pills. Yeah, and this is a horrific because right now we're seeing in the state of California, last year was a major push to bring about RU486, a mifepristone pill. It's 2 sets of pills. It's a take it at home pill, but you are essentially, your baby's dying, and then you are passing, or almost a minor delivery that can take place at home, your child. And the blood clotting, I remember reading in her book years ago that she was passing blood clots the size of baseballs. And having worked in the crisis pregnancy centers for years, we would have women who would come in for weeks, they'd be bleeding. And I remember Abby said in her book, she talked about how she didn't want to call friends, family members, go to the hospital, or call 911 because she felt like she deserved this. Despite choosing and wanting the abortion, she knew that she was responsible for what's happening to her child.
And as you were starting to say, that California attempted to push this bill that this abortion pill would be able to be dispersed for free on college campuses.
Yes.
So thank goodness that didn't happen. But this is what's trying to be forced. This is the agenda that's trying to be pushed. And what I think is so powerful about our film is all these young girls on college campuses. I mean, let's hope to God that never actually goes through and happens. But when these college age girls see this scene in this movie, they are not going to be interested in taking this pill. When they see the reality that it's not just a quick, few minutes and everything's taken care of. So again, the film is just completely sheds the light and the truth on what goes on.
I call it especially to all Californians because although back in 2018 this bill was defeated, it's actually being proposed to the legislators. So just a couple weeks ago, we did a show with John Girardi, and he talked about how we need to be prepared, and we can actually begin to contact our legislators now to make sure that college campuses do not have access to this pill, which in fact just made national news because the FDA is going after some of the off-brand versions of the pill that are not approved by the FDA that are causing major medical health issues for women. But so does RU486 that is approved by the FDA, but women don't want to talk about it because they think this is a right to privacy. This is necessary for me to go to college, to have a career and get ahead.
Again, that's the propaganda from Planned Parenthood. You don't want to ruin your life by having a baby. You don't want to ruin your college career by having a baby.
Right.
But they don't tell you. They actually, I think, even state on their website that most women have no emotional repercussion.
Oh, gosh.
But meanwhile, as you and I both know, and you probably more than me with the work that you've done, but now I'm becoming more familiar. And then being a minister, I've dealt with many post-abortive women that are beautiful Christian women that are still dealing with the shame and the guilt 10 years, 20 years, 30 years afterwards. So to say that there are no repercussions is just, no one's telling you that. No one tells you the depression that you can go through for years, the trauma.
And in your experience, too, I have to ask Robia, and by the way, those who are just joining us, Robia Scott, who's one of the main actresses of Unplanned, she plays the character Cheryl, who really grooms Abby Johnson to be the youngest Planned Parenthood director of a clinic in Texas. Now, Cheryl, I have to ask, it's really...
Cheryl.
Oh my gosh, Cheryl. I'm going to start calling you Cheryl.
What a great actress I am. It's seamless. It's seamless.
It's seamless. Looking to this entire movie in your experience, what have you seen as a minister with women? Most women don't actually want the abortion. It's a Band-Aid for what's going on in their life. Would you agree with that based on your experience as a minister?
I think so. I mean, I can't imagine that many women wanting an abortion. I believe there's pressure. There's family pressure. There's boyfriend pressure. There's believing that there's no other way out. And that's what's so beautiful about all the pregnancy centers that will really honestly nurture a woman and show her all of her options. And in the perfect case scenario, that's what Planned Parenthood could be and should be. And we would hope that, that's the work they would do, really nurture women and show them their options. but that's not the case.
It's so difficult because in the pro-life world, and this is a challenge to everyone, I really want you to go opening weekend to see Unplanned, March 29th, because if it does well in the box offices, it will be kept on longer in theaters. And we need especially young women to see this movie, because the reality is that as California is facing a major expansion of abortion potentially with RU486 pills available on campus, most women are not coming into the crisis pregnancy centers like they used to, because many of them are taking Plan B, which is also known as a morning after pill. So many women, if they really do not want to get pregnant, the day after they have sex every day are taking Plan B. And so we're seeing fewer and fewer women coming to the crisis pregnancy centers. And so this movie that you have acted in has truly made it so that we can still reach out to women before they have the abortion, before they take the pill, before they have sex, to plant a seed to the reality of what abortion is.
And it's so important that your listeners know that if this is a topic that is important to them, that they literally vote with their movie ticket. Because when a film does well on opening weekend, not everyone understands this, but when a film has a big opening weekend box office, the media pays attention. Even if they don't want to, they have to, because money talks, and it gets even the liberal side of the media paying attention. Hollywood pays attention. The movie stays in theaters longer. It spreads out further and goes to more theaters, and it has the opportunity to impact more lives.
It was wonderful. Actually, last year, the movie I Can Only Imagine, which tells a story of one of the singers from Mercy Me, correct?
That's correct. And we have the producers, a number of our producers on our movie are from I Can Only Imagine.
I Can Only Imagine. And it was awesome because the Christian world really came out and supported that here in the United States, and it made the top 10 on opening weekend. So let's do this for the movie Unplanned. You can go to unplannedfilm.com. I have with me today Robia Scott, and we're going to talk coming up about her experience touring worldwide with Prince and your dancing experience, and really how you came out of the acting world and the challenges you saw, the precursors of the Me Too movement. Okay, let's go ahead and slide right in. You need water or anything? You good?
Let's do it.
Okay. And
You're listening to Trending with Timmery.
in studio with me today is Robia Scott, and it's wonderful to have you here because you're telling the story of Unplanned, the movie that's coming out on March 29th. But also, you spent many years acting and dancing in Hollywood with Prince. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and the role you played in his national tours?
I did. You know, I started my career as a teenager. I saw the movie Flashdance. Are you even old? Are you old enough to remember this? Yes. I saw the movie Flashdance as a young girl and decided, oh my goodness, I need to do that, because I, like so many girls, was just dancing around my living room. And when I saw that movie, I realized that you could take it past your living room and do it as a career. And I'm not kidding. I went out and got a big, huge perm. Now, this was the 80s. And so perms, I got a huge perm, bought a lot of leg warmers, cut off all my sweatshirts, and I was Jennifer Beals. So I started training very seriously as a dancer.
Ballet, jazz, what did you take?
All of it. Every day after school, I was training for hours every day and got a dance agent. And this was right around the time that MTV was starting to rise.
Oh, wow.
So everyone was doing music videos, every band. So I did a ton of music videos. And then Prince found me, and he was looking for a set of twins to play Diamond and Pearl for his Diamonds and Pearls album. He could not find authentic twins, and he really liked me, and he found another girl who looked a lot like me. So we were not related, but we played the twins, and that was just extraordinary. You know, I was maybe 19 years old, traveling the world, all over Europe with Prince, dancing in front of 60,000 people at a time. It was an incredible experience. And after that, I retired as a dancer because I didn't think there was anywhere to go at that point. So I'd been dancing for about 8 years when I was working with Prince, and so I transitioned into acting. And as I told you, I did a whole bunch of different TV shows and things like that.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for those who are just joining us, 90210.
Yes, CSI, all sorts of shows. And then I became a Christian and felt a little bit of a conflict with moving forward in Hollywood, and at the same time just felt very passionate about God. And I felt like the gift of communication that he gave me, that I was using in artistry, was really to be used for the kingdom. So I just shifted gears and stepped into full-time ministry as a teacher, as a speaker, doing conferences and traveling around the world ministering. And through just a God-only series of events, I randomly met Carrie and Chuck, the writer-directors of God's Not Dead, that hit film from a few years ago.
Yes.
And they happen to be doing this new movie, Unplanned, the story of Abby Johnson. They shared the story with me. I was intrigued. And before I knew it, I was on set. After a 15-year hiatus from entertainment, God brought me back for such a time as this.
Well, and isn't it incredible in your story? You mentioned earlier how all of a sudden there started to be conflict. You're having this major conversion to Christianity. You said you're wanting to pray more, but a life in Hollywood is not conducive with a Christian lifestyle. Can you speak a little bit to kind of some of the challenges you started to face?
Yes. I mean, I know that there are Christian, actors and musicians and people in Hollywood now, doing things for God. And I do believe God puts people into positions so that they can be the light in the darkness. Sometimes he puts people in and other times he pulls people out. And for me, he pulled me out because what I was seeing in Hollywood and what was available to me, there was just nothing that was not a conflict for me to do. Everything was a lot of occult, especially around that time of Buffy. The occult was really starting to grow in terms of all different television shows touching on that, and witchcraft.
Now, would you say that, and I know you've been out of Hollywood for a while, but for example, the new show Sabrina, have you seen it on Netflix?
I haven't.
Have you heard a little bit about
TV
it? Okay.
Because it's so bad.
Okay, we're going to have to come back to that because I think that's a really interesting take given the fact that you worked in the television
Yes,
industry.
I don't have
for
TV
years.
and I don't have Netflix.
Well, I'd be interested because Sabrina is a remake of the 1990s show Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
I remember that show.
And it was very lighthearted. It was fun. I can imagine, but there was possibly an occult behind it at the time as well.
Well, that's the dupe of the enemy, really, to make these shows seem like quote unquote entertainment.
Yes.
Harry Potter, it's just a great book. Oh, isn't this amazing that our kids in America are reading again? No, it's not, because what are they reading? And to think that we can watch things, the eye gates, the ear gates, to think that that doesn't affect you. And that's exactly how, the other side, the other kingdom, the darkness gets these type of things. It desensitizes us as a culture to the sexuality, to the witchcraft, to all of this kind of darkness.
And that's what's so terrifying about the Netflix show that came out right around Halloween of 2018 is that Sabrina, it was so dark. I mean, they start with her dark baptism and it requires things like a blood sacrifice and all of these elements. I mean,
For a teenage girl?
For teenage girls.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I have to tell you, I was terrified watching it and I only watched it for the sake of talking about it on the show. But talk a little bit about the challenges. I mean, back 15 years ago, the occult in the acting community.
Well, you mean on television or within
behind the scenes?
I'm not sure. I didn't really I wasn't involved in that. So I don't know what went on in terms of all those lifestyle things and what people were doing.
You just have this attitude of that's not for me and you stayed far away?
I mean, I was a little bit actually involved in terms of the New Age movement.
Okay.
Because especially when you are in Southern California and you're seeking spirituality, which I was, that is what is the most prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was seeking God, that seemed accessible. So I got into yoga and meditation and New Age type things a bit. But thank God for his grace, it just didn't go too far. And then he pulled me out and I had some people talking to me about Christ and wound up, going in that direction.
This extreme turn to Buddhism, Hinduism, and yoga, and I find, yoga's become such a gateway for so many people who are searching for some sort of meaning and offering in their life. It's a reminder that our hearts are so oriented toward worship. And it sounds like that was a part of your journey in some ways. You're looking for spirituality. You're looking for ultimately God, and you found him, but so many people aren't.
Well, we're built to be supernatural. God made us to be supernatural. And that's why even as young kids, we hook into things like witchcraft because there's something about that inherent desire to know that we're more than just these fleshly bodies. We're more than just body and soul. We're also spirit. So when we don't really see the godly side of spirit and we haven't been taught or educated in that, again, what's most prevalent is the other side, is the dark side.
And that's where people are turning so many. I mean, the rise in witchcraft and the normalcy. I think before 20 years ago, there's a secrecy to it. Now it's out in the open. We are seeing such a rise. It's terrifying, but that's what's in the heart of Hollywood. So we were talking earlier about what were some of the challenges. Talk about the challenges in terms of sexuality in Hollywood, because especially touring with Prince, and we're seeing right now this rise of the objections of Hollywood over the Me Too movement. It's so inconsistent because that's what they've been living for so long.
Yes, I mean, obviously Hollywood is so about sexuality and being a woman in Hollywood. And for me, being a professional dancer and doing a bunch of music videos, obviously that was entwined with what I did. I think I've always leaned a little bit more conservative just in my nature. So, you know, I did some music videos where I'm dancing and doing all of that, but in comparison to what is out there, it was pretty minor.
Was there a point where suddenly you started to be challenged more so in terms of your dancing becoming more sexualized?
It wasn't as the dancing. That's not when it happened for me, because I had retired from dancing before I was a Christian and stepped into acting. It was really when I became a believer, and it was the acting roles where, because also of how I look, you know, I didn't play the little sweet girl next door. You know, my look was the mafia daughter who was killing somebody, was the highly sexual role, the villain. So it was just all of these themes that I did not want to do. And even, I mean, to be honest with you, even doing something like a sitcom, and this is where we can go a little bit deeper, the underlying tone in the sitcom was just negative toward the family dynamic, was the woman being, you know, kind of negative toward her husband,
Can you give us
putting
an
him
example
down.
where you were in the midst of that? Because you were behind the scenes also seeing the writing and how these stories were being sculpted.
Well, I mean, that's what Hollywood puts out. It was not very edifying. You know, even in our, what's humorous is sarcasm.
Sexual
sarcasm, really breaking the family unit, like coming against that, making that seem like it's a lesser thing, even in shows like Sex and the City and how that affected our culture. You know, really putting that pervasive message out there that real family and commitment and love was not cool. And the cool thing to do was to be incredibly sexually promiscuous. And they don't show the effects of that.
You know, this is one of the challenges I find, and I would love to hear your thoughts too. Today, and maybe this is why you're no longer watching television, there's no good teen movie content. I mean, maybe Mary-Kate and Ashley back in the early 2000s was fun. It still had a party mentality, but they weren't doing anything they shouldn't be doing in their parties. But even then, Mary-Kate and Ashley, there was always, the parents weren't involved, there was separation of the parents, versus today you have shows like Sabrina. You have so many shows that 13 Reasons Why that came out on Netflix, which I'm sure you were exposed to, that's dealing with really adult issues such as intense sexual promiscuity, suicide. The teenagers should be able to just have fun and enjoy entertainment, not be exposed to this.
It's a different world, and social media has obviously really changed that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's happening with our culture. You know, on the entertainment side, on the political side, things just continue to push the envelope. And that's why my prayer with this film is it's going to be God really turning the tide a bit. And one thing I sensed in prayer recently was that the Spirit of God is going to start to take over the airwaves a bit more now, through radio, through television, through film, because the media is so impactful. You know, I've said this a couple times, but television programming, it really programs us as to what is acceptable, what is desirable. And for too long, our programming has been all from that side. So I believe this movie is a piece of turning the tide for culture, and God really releasing a different message through the airwaves and through the media.
Ruby, if people want to find more about your work, where can people find you?
My website, robiascott.com, is a great place to go. And then I'm all over social media too. You just Google Robia. There are not a lot of Robias out there.
No, beautiful. That's ROBIA, Robia Scott. It's wonderful to have you here. We're going to have you come back in just a few minutes here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about why you're not watching television and how you implement that, because you have a young daughter, correct?
That is correct.
And how you find that balance in your home with being countercultural, but not making your kids feel isolated. Okay, coming in for our last segment. Awesome. It's flying by.
I know. Do you want to talk about the R rating a little bit?
Sure.
And encourage them to go?
Absolutely. We'll go ahead. We can wrap up. Anything else you really wanted to cover as well?
No. I mean, I'm good to go with the flow.
Okay, awesome. So we'll hit our rating. We can actually talk about that first. And we'll also talk about... Awesome. Let's go.
You're listening to Trending with Timmery, where morality and culture meet, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics.
So great to be with all of you today in studio. If you've missed the rest of the interview, you can head over to radiotrending.com for the latest episode. But in studio with me today is Robia Scott, and she is one of the leading actresses in the movie Unplanned, telling the story of a young woman who became a Planned Parenthood director and participated in over 22,000 abortions through counseling and leading this Planned Parenthood clinic, but had a major conversion, a conversion that I hope all of you will go and watch the show. So you can find that at unplannedfilm.com. Robia, let's talk a little bit about the rating of the movie that has suddenly become rated R. Tell us what happened and kind of your take on it, especially based on you've interacted with different rating systems for some of the shows that you've acted in.
It's just interesting what we've just been talking about, what's on television right now, that anyone can view. Shows like Sabrina that are dealing with serious occult and witchcraft that obviously have no rating.
Right.
But the Motion Picture Association will rate a movie rated R according to a few criteria: sexuality, nudity, foul language, and violence. Unplanned has no sexuality, no nudity, no foul language, but the Motion Picture Association has deemed abortion a violent act.
Wow.
So in some ways, they've actually admitted that, on one side, they want to believe that it's an empowerment, that whole kind of liberal side, but by seeing a few scenes in this movie, they said that it was a violent act.
I really hope that in making it rated R, it actually attracts people to it more so. My gut says that it will. What do you think?
I agree completely. I think God's hand is all over this and nothing is going to stop it. There's a scripture that talks about what the enemy means for bad, God will turn around for good. So I just think every time a roadblock tries to come up, that it's actually going to further the movie. And parents need to know, and church leaders need to know that, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and for all of us that, are hesitant or churchgoers that say, oh, we don't see rated R movies. Yes, we don't want to see rated R movies because we don't want that extreme sexuality. We don't want to hear foul language. We don't want that to be in our spirit, in our soul. But this imagery in this film is not something that we want to protect our youth from or even ourselves from.
Absolutely.
This is the truth on the screen. It's not gratuitous, but it is clear. And there are some scenes that are not necessarily easy to watch, but they're important to watch. And ironically, a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl now can go to many places across the country and get an abortion at Planned Parenthood without parental consent.
Right, California is one of those states.
But she cannot see this movie without parental consent. So the irony of that is absurd. And depending on what age you feel your child can handle it, I think that's up to each parent.
Yes.
But I would say, for me, about a 12, 13-year-old could definitely benefit from seeing this movie because this age group is not getting the information.
And these kids are already sexually active very often. So if your child is that innocent, sweet 12, 13-year-old, God bless you and preserve that innocence. However, we can't be naive enough to think that their peer group or the things that they're exposed to are not exposing them to things that they're trying to process, and they need to talk to you as
what
parents
they're seeing
about.
on Instagram alone, what their friends are talking about, even in Christian Catholic schools. It is out there. So we have got to let them understand what the truth of the message is.
So you, having worked in Hollywood for a number of years at dancing, acting, film, it's interesting because you said earlier that you do not watch television, and I imagine you don't let your daughter either.
She will watch a little bit of different videos and things.
Like from the 50s.
No, I wish. That is a constant struggle for a parent, that dang iPad.
Yes.
I can't stand it, but at the same time, sometimes you need it. You feel like you need it. It's helpful. So it's a line that we are constantly trying to navigate what she can watch and what she can't watch. And even there, some of the cartoons have all the themes of the darkness and the witchcraft all through the kids' media. It's pervasive.
Well, and it's so interesting because there's so many anti-heroes anymore where even the good guys, there's a difference between, for example, Abby's story comes from a horrific thing that she's doing and has a conversion. A lot of the stories, whether it's teen movies or even simple cartoons, the stories, the good guy or the person who's having a conversion, there's always this justification of the bad they're still doing. And it's so surprising in a lot of the different films where we're seeing this happening more and more. And so it's hard because how do you help young people to see that it truly is a battle between black and white, good and evil, right? The light and the darkness, yet so many people are not seeing that because there's this innuendo or there's this justification of something in a film.
Superbook, that's the answer.
Superbook.
Superbook. Those are good, clean, wholesome. Yes.
What's Superbook?
Superbook is, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Superbook is all these cartoon stories of the Bible stories.
Wonderful.
That our daughter watches those nonstop. So she says, can I watch anything else besides Superbook? So she knows all the stories of everyone in the Bible. Parents need to know about Superbook.
And it's hard because the kids are going to ask those questions. Well, I can't watch anything. All my friends are watching this, or my friends have a cell phone. I don't. But to raise your child countercultural is so important today, yet people are so afraid of being the bad parent or making their kid the weirdo. What would you say to parents who are struggling with that?
It's a fine line. I mean, I don't want to get so super spiritual that your child rebels and thinks that, everything is demonic or dark, but it is so important. They're such sponges, and everything that really she watches, our daughter, even the innocent things like the Disney, the gals singing and jumping around, they still have that little bit of that overly mature type of vibe. And so it's hard. I can't really find many things that I like her to watch. We let her watch some things, but
Disney's currently casting for one of their very first on film superhero characters that will be identified as gay. And it's so hard because superhero movies are primarily for teenagers. And yet teens aren't ready to deal with these tough issues. And so, it's such a reminder that we've got to continue to be aware, have that filtration, and be aware of what young people are watching. But I think that this is where some people may come in and say, well, Unplanned is rated R, as we mentioned.
yes.
I don't know that I want my child to be that exposed yet to the issue of abortion. And I've even had many people inside the church say, well, maybe once they're like in college, we can begin to talk about abortion. What would you say?
College is a little late.
It's too late.
I think
right.
so.
It's too late.
I really do think that the young teens, 12, 13, 14, because they are getting that education just by watching television, by being in school, by looking at social media. So I personally feel that. I do think each parent needs to decide. But because I'm in this movie, my husband and I shared what abortion is with our 8-year-old daughter. She's not going to see the movie yet. I don't think she is mature enough to handle it. But because she hears me doing everything for the movie and she saw the trailer and she knows I'm the bad guy, we did explain to her that abortion is when someone kills the baby in your tummy. And it's quite interesting to watch kids' reactions.
What was her reaction?
Her reaction was she just couldn't believe it. It was unfathomable. What do you mean? What do you mean that who would do that? And I think every child has that reaction.
Exactly.
Every 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old would think, who on earth would do that?
It's a black and white issue to children if only we ourselves could have that simple understanding. But it's a testament to so many adults who don't want to talk about the issue of abortion yet. You can in simple ways. It's the killing of a baby in a mommy's tummy.
Yes.
That's what it is. And it's heartbreaking. And that child may cry and be upset over it. But it's a lesson we have to teach today.
It is.
So I'd love to talk about what's next for you, because here you are back in the acting world. Are you looking at taking more roles in acting?
Goodness, I can't believe it. I'm not going to pursue it necessarily, but I have a feeling that the door will open when this movie comes out. I'm definitely a minister at heart. That's who I am. That's what I'm going to do. But I love the idea that media is sort of an arm of that.
Yes.
So if it aligns with who I am and the message I want to bring forward, I would definitely be open to more movies.
Excellent. This is Robia Scott, and she is acting in the film Unplanned. You can find it at unplannedfilm.com. I'm really encouraging you guys to get out, support it opening weekend, March 29th. Like you said earlier, Robia, the more people supporting the movie opening weekend, the greater the impact.
Yes, you don't want to think, oh, that looks like a good movie, I'm going to go see that, whenever I get to it. No, our body of Christ has to get out on the 29th, the 30th, the 31st, because won't it be incredible on April 1st when we all wake up and people will think it's an April Fool's Jules joke when Unplanned is the #1 movie in America.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
Wouldn't that be incredible? So we know as a people, we're going to really put a stake in the ground. And, truly every real change that's happened culturally has happened from the people, a change of heart of the people first. It doesn't usually happen with legislation first. Just like the civil rights movement, the people get their eyes open to what's going on and the hearts turn. And there's such a radical shift that the government has to follow suit. So I believe this is sort of a civil rights issue of this time, and that God's going to use Unplanned as a tool of love, as a weapon of love to open the eyes of people, to bring hope, healing, redemption, and a shift in our culture and in our politics.
And I do have to say, for those who don't know, Unplanned Story also tells a story of an incredibly powerful prayer warrior program happening across the country, and that's 40 Days for Life. 40 Days for Life actually started outside of the abortion clinic where Abby Johnson was working. And so 40 Days for Life is taking place right now during Lent. You can go to the number 40daysforlife.com, and you can sign up to participate in a 24-hour prayer and fasting in front of the abortion clinic.
And you can actually give a tax-deductible donation to them because they have already bought out numerous theaters for opening weekend.
40 Days for Life has?
40 Days for Life has. So you can actually sew into them and get a tax-deductible donation and help them fill the theaters. So again, we have a huge box office for opening weekend.
This is incredible. Now, I would love to talk more about the Dancing Raw, but I've got to ask, do you ever take dance classes still for fun?
I actually jumped back in about a couple months ago.
Did you?
After 25 years away from dancing. And yes, it's right now I'm a little busy with the movie, but it was fun to step back into those old shoes.
What have you been taking?
Some jazz, some contemporary jazz.
So fun. I know it's been hard for me after college and just life. It's hard to take dance classes, but it's so important that we do what we love. It's part of who we are.
I agree.
And I imagine your discipline and hard work, you would not be where you are if it weren't in some ways for your dance background.
It's true. That does lay a foundation of diligence for sure.
Roby, it's been wonderful having you. Robia Scott is one of the leading actresses from the movie Unplanned. Please get your tickets opening weekend, March 29th. Head over to unplannedfilm.com to find out more about screenings. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Robia.
We could have just talked forever.
I know. I'm going to turn off the cameras real quick. And then I know you've got to get going in just a couple minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can actually put it if you want to have that one. Make sure it's the top right corner.
That's nice, honey. What is this? A little matcha?